Morning, and how are you this morning? It's half term, so the whole house is quiet. It's been quite nice because I haven't had to rush around and doing all that getting ready to school business. And it looks like the rain is going to hold off. I don't know what the weather has been like with you recently, but since I think Friday last week, it's been chucking it down every single morning, and the gloom, you sort of start thinking, is this it? Is this November weather come early? Is it the doom and gloom of wintertime? And then by lunchtime, it's blue skies and sunshine. So I have high hopes that today may well be a blue sky day. Hello there, I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. Online in the sense that I'm here live on YouTube. I'm also live on Facebook on a Friday morning, or that Facebook Live, I'm in my kitchen. So I'm wondering, why do I choose to be outdoors first thing in the morning in the elements, but at like Friday lunchtime, I'm indoors? I don't quite know. Perhaps I'll have to switch those two arrangements around come the winter months. Also, I have an pre-recorded an email video class, so I'm counting that online too. And of course, online with Zoom Flower Class, which is a Tuesday at noon, although it's not on today because it's half term, and doesn't everybody deserve a half-term break? So if you're watching live, please leave me a comment with the hashtag live. Can you hear those noises? The wind, although there is no wind, it must just be in the right direction. Away from our house, we have the A2, which runs from Dover up to London. And then beyond that, just before that, we have the railway line, which runs from Margate and Dover up to London. And then beyond that, the motorway, which runs from the Canterbury area up to London. And sometimes it's really quiet and you might think you live in the middle of the countryside, and sometimes with the wind in the right direction you could hear everything, and at that point no. So I'm going to take this opportunity to say good morning to Lisa, and also good morning to Joan. That was a noise, that was a train going past you. And really, I don't live, everything in Faversham is close to everything else, but if I wanted to walk to the train line, it is probably only 500 metres that way, but to walk it was sort of a bit of a longer way. And it was a combination of, it was a train, Lisa. There's a level crossing, a people crossing, and is it the law that the trains have to sound their horns before they approach the crossing? So it's not a level crossing for traffic, it's one of those ones where you have to go through a kissing gate and then you stand on the edge of the two-way railway line, looking very carefully left and right, and remember everything about the railway children and going across. And I just, you always take your hand in your heart, thinking, is there suddenly going to be a train that appears? So, Joan, no, we don't live near the airport, although I will say Gatwick is 50 miles away, and we quite often get the aeroplanes, you can see the trails in the sky. And I guess really, Gatwick isn't that far away. We're not far from London, so we've got Heathrow and London City Airport as well. So we do, but normally we don't hear the aeroplanes. They're still really high in the sky when they're coming up over us. So what's the project today, Julie? Well, I don't know whether you can see, but I have still got a few hydrangeas in my garden, a few stems of sedum, and also the last of the dahlias and the zinnias. And I'm not going to cut those down because I don't know whether you've just seen, I posted a pre-recorded video up yesterday. I know Joan has seen it. And I got quite a big arrangement in my home, and I've used all the flowers that were left over from class, plus all the flowers and greenery that I was gifted. Sometimes when my students come to class, my live class on a Wednesday in Canterbury, they arrive with all their bits and pieces, and then they make the beautiful arrangements and take them home. And I just think they sometimes feel that having taken the arrangement home, they don't want to take all the leftovers, greenery and things like that. So I was very lucky that I got given some greenery. And also, Kath, if you're watching, Kath, Kath gave me some of the purple pussy willow and also a stem of Chinese lanterns as well. So I've made that into a really huge arrangement. And to be honest, I don't want to have another big arrangement at home. I just, is there such a thing of having too many flowers? I'm sure there isn't really. It's more a case of I haven't really got the surfaces to put them on. So my plan for today is to use my salvia hot lips. Do you remember that a couple of weeks ago I picked loads of salvia? So this is from my front garden, and there is, I got a few beds of it here as well. And I was saying that I don't really like the salvia hot lips, but I was sort of cutting it back because it was overhanging the lawn. And once it starts overhanging the lawn, the grass underneath dies. So I was sort of doing my cut back, my hack back of plants, because I don't really like it, and I thought perhaps if I cut it back really harshly it might actually die and we could plant something I liked. So I've just freshly cut this from the front garden, but what I had in my vase has all dried out. Well, you know me, it's camouflaged so well you can barely see what's real dead stuff and what's live in the garden. I had this on the side and it looked very grand because it made a huge bouquet in my vase. And then it got to the stage where it started to drop and the petals were shattering. And I quite like that stage of detritus. And then I thought eventually I've really got to tidy this away, it doesn't look very good. And I had this in a vase on the patio table. And then I think on Saturday night, the wind and the rain really got up. So I had to dash out here in my slippers and retrieve the vase because I thought it was going to smash. Lisa's saying that she says it's such a rewarding plant. I must say, Lisa, I find it a bit too shaggy, and for me, I find the flowers too small. Everything in our garden seems to be dotty, and there's nowhere for you to rest your eye. Sometimes when I'm talking about your flower arrangements in class, we talk about your focal flower. It's not only to draw your eye in, but it's somewhere for your eye to rest, whether that's a focal flower or a big leaf or something like that. And I just feel like applying the principles and elements of floristry design to garden design, that I just feel that most everything in our garden is a bit too dotty and spotty, and there's nowhere for your eye to rest. I can say that because my husband doesn't watch my YouTube channel and he's still in bed, so don't rat on me if you happen to see him in the street. So I thought, why don't I use my dried out stems, and imagine my hot lips has dried out, and I thought this looks quite straw-like, and I thought, well, I really love a door wreath, and on my front door at the moment, Lisa's having a laugh at me. On my front door at the moment, I have got the most amazing door wreath, and it's so amazing that I haven't changed it over. Normally, I like to change my, my door wreaths with my mood, and I'm always making them at class, and I, switch them all around. And I've actually got loads of door wreaths hanging up in my workshop, just sort of waiting for their moment. So the one I've got hanging up at the moment is the one that I made with the little china dishes, tiny saucers, and I think some of them must be coasters with some lovely satin ribbon in them. And if you're interested in that video, when this video goes live, I will leave a link to it. But this lovely door, and I get loads of comments about it. But with the, as the seasons are changing and, we're getting into frost season, I don't really want it's not precious crockery, but I don't really want these bits of china to break in the frost. So I'm going to bring it indoors and bring something else out. And I thought, why don't I use these stems here as like a base for a door wreath? Now, originally I was thinking perhaps I could be really clever and bind this all together. Actually, perhaps I can still be clever because this does feel quite sturdy. I was wondering about binding all this together to then make it a base for a door wreath. And as I bind that, although I don't like hot lips very much, it has got this scent to it, and I can't decide whether I like the scent. So let me know, you gardeners here, whether you like the scent. I've likened it before to the scent that you get when you've grown your own tomatoes. It's a very vine-like tomatoey smell, and this has got a scent to it, and I can't decide, like choicea. People say it smells like catwee, whether it's a pleasant smell or not, I'm not quite sure. But I thought perhaps I could group all these stems together. My favourite thing to do with my flower arranging is that sort of joining between flower arranging and craft, and I like reusing everything, recycling it, so perhaps any normal person would just run straight down to the compost heap and get rid of this. I'm thinking, well, perhaps I can get another use of this. It could become my door wreath. Now, it does feel quite sturdy, but what I have found is one of these round door wreath frames, and I thought perhaps I could strap the greenery onto the door wreath, and then perhaps with the last of my sedum, the last of my hydrangea, our hydrangea never develops into big enough flowers to dry. It's always been like that. And then I've looked at it just this morning, and some of the sort of inside head of the hydrangea is dying off, so I can't cut them to dry, but I could perhaps cut them to put into a door wreath. And also, I think that zinnias dry quite well. So I thought, end of the season, I've just said I don't want another vase of flowers in the house, but perhaps I could cut some flowers and actually have fresh materials in my door wreath, which would just slowly dry out over time. So what do you reckon? Do you think I should use the metal frame here, or just go for it and see whether, that's only going to go halfway around, which is why I have cut the other bunch. So I'm thinking, let's be a cheapskate, because Christmas season is approaching, and I'm bound to need one of these for my classes. So I might see, trial and error how this works. So what I'm going to do is, using my favourite bind one, and again I can leave a link to that in the comments in the description when the video goes live. So I could use this string, it's like string but it's paper covered wire, so you don't have to tie a knot, you can just twist tie it. That if I overbind this and then add in my bunches, I wonder whether it will be robust enough to support itself. And I guess if it isn't robust enough to support itself, I have then got the option. I could either take it apart and start again, or I could just lash it onto that frame for that extra support. The thing about door wreaths is sometimes when you make them out of the natural plant material, they can become misshapen. So they, with gravity as well, and instead of having a nice neat round ring, sometimes it drops and it's egg-shaped. But that is just the nature of nature, really. And I always say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be picture perfect. And if you wanted an absolutely perfectly symmetrical door wreath, well, you could buy one or get your florist to make one. And sometimes I think, anyway, the door wreaths that you buy, perhaps if you're thinking of buying online, they're never as nice as the ones that you could make at home. They never seem to be packed out particularly well. So those of you who came to class in Canterbury last week will have seen me do this technique. And I did show you this sort of wand technique in my Facebook Live from my kitchen on Friday, so you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So I am going to strap my pieces together like this, overlay my next bunch, catch in those loose ends, and work my way around. So when I bent this around in my hand, it, I'll have to see whether I've gone halfway round, whether I've got enough. Have I got enough for half a circle, or have I gone more to 3/4, just so I can gauge how much more of the plant material that I will need. So it's all going okay until you get to this join, and then it's sort of spinning out. So because I've got the wire on it, the paper covered wire, it is capable of being manipulated. But to start off with, it comes, a lovely egg shape, great for Easter. I'm going to have to go round and manipulate it round a little bit. And if I'd done this direct on the door wreath, it would have bound on straight away. It would have, gone to the shape. So I reckon I've gone 2/3 of the way round. Shall we give this a go? So the next third, I'm going to have to use my fresh greenery. And as this dies out, the leaves will fall off and it will shrink a little bit. So I'm kind of conscious that as I add this into my bundles, I've got the dried out materials that are quite dense because I packed them together, and then I'm putting in something that's a little bit more airy. So we'll have to make sure that it doesn't look like I've got a fat bit to my door wreath and then a thin bit. So going all the way around to bind this in, giving me a little bit of natural colour. So this will shake down a bit. So, and then as I go back, I'm going to cut off my string, leaving myself a long length. And then I can bind that in over the top. So I just want to make sure it's not too big. So I'm going to put it up against my, this is I think it's a 30 centimetre wreath, which is the sort of standard size for a wreath. You could go smaller, and if you had a really impressive wide front door, I would always suggest that you go a bit bigger. So I reckon I can pull that in a little bit tighter, and then I'm binding my fresh materials up over that dry section of the wreath. And the way I can stop my circlet misshaping itself is to be quite generous with my binding. So to begin with, I've just put they're probably about 4 centimetres apart. I might have to go over one more time and do a much tighter binding, just so it holds everything together and it doesn't ping out of place. So these stubby bits of the vine, I can then lash them in like that. So I have got plenty more hot lips. So what I'm going to do is then put my fresh hot lips in, and my base will be the dried out hot lips, the stems, and then I'm going to have this more, well, for the moment, a more robust, a more luscious looking top layer. So I can add those in as well. So I might have to cut off some of those stems later and go around. So you can imagine if you were doing this in your own garden, you'd cut back some greenery. You could just be, a hot cup of tea. I will say that my cup of tea now has gone cold, and it's also got leaf confetti in it, so I'm not going to be able to drink it. But you could, set yourself up, dress warmly, put your gloves on if you want to work with gloves on. Make sure you've got quite sturdy shoes on, because the cold does come up. I'm standing on my patio. I'm starting to feel the cold coming up from my patio. So going around like that, and the more you wrap on, the more robust and sturdy your base will become. So I'm running out of the wire, so what I'm going to do here is twist tie my pieces together. If I was working this without showing you, I'd be doing it all on the table, and I would actually be taking my ball of string, my wire round and round. I wouldn't cut it off, but I was just getting in a tangle, because I'm showing you how to do this from upright position. Right, twist, twist, twist. So have you been making door wreaths? Do you like door wreaths, or do you think that door wreaths are for Christmas only? So Lisa is admiring my skills. Thank you, Lisa. And you can see here again, this bit here is pinged out of place. So they are the woody stems. It'd be great if your name was Queenie, wouldn't it? If you could have that as your initial letter on your front door. If that is too stiff, I'm probably going to cut those off if they just won't go in. Oh, Lisa made a crochet wreath. Well, Lisa, you're going to have to show that in the Facebook group, Flower Start World. We'd love to see. So was it one that had crocheted plant materials on it? I have seen a lady, is it Lucy from Attic 24? She does seasonal door wreaths that she's crocheted, and they look fabulous. I'm not the world's best crocheter. I think actually I need to go to a class, because I quite like crocheting, because it's a quick make, isn't it? It grows really quickly, unlike knitting. I'm just going to trim these bits off here. But I don't understand how you, if you're knitting, I've made some bucket baskets that I sometimes use as my tool bag for my classes. And I know that I don't know how to add in the extra stitch so that you get lines of crochet rather than spirals of crochet. I don't really understand the pattern. I have to see if I can sit down with somebody or find myself a class and learn how to do it properly. So another bit of the wire on there. So I'm going to, I don't want to be cutting stuff off really. I'm going to see if I can bend those twiggy bits down, lay over the fresh on the top, and make sure I'm winding in the same direction so I don't unwind everything. That's still attached to the string. I'm going to give myself that much to work with. And once I have gone and lashed in all my materials, I will then go round and just keep using the paper covered wire, just so it becomes sturdier and sturdier and sturdier. So at this stage, when you've finished, you could just tie off. See, Lisa, I admire you for learning that from YouTube, but I haven't yet found a video that shows up in sufficiently close detail how you do that extra stitch and do it. And I'm never really sure when I crochet which hole I'm going into. But is that the joy of crocheting, that you just keep going? So I'm going around there, and I got a floppy bit over here. So I'm going to hold it there. And what I'm going to do now is to add in some fresh plant material. So it has come quite sturdy. So the more you add in, the more sturdy it becomes. And the bits that I felt were misshapen will get drawn in or tightened in as I add in the extra layers at the top. So I'm going to get rid of that. It's not bad, so I haven't actually had to cut off any stubby bits, but again, before I get to the, when I finished it, I do like to put my wreath down and just sort of clear up and then come back and have another look and think, is that okay or not? So shall I go and cut some of my flowers and see what I can add in? So, as I say, meagre pickings really. I'm not going to pick loads. So I've got a stem of sedum, and then a little bit of hydrangea. I'm probably going to split this down into florets. So this is all looking very weather beaten. They're all pink, so I might go for a few pink of the sedum as well. Just to get me going and see how we feel about this. Now, I might also add in some flowers I've got left over from an arrangement. I don't know whether you remember watching when I did my Friday Facebook Live. I sort of took out my flowers from my little copper container, and then I've been wondering over the weekend why everything seems to be dying off. And then I remembered that, as I was signing up from my Facebook group, Facebook Live, I didn't remember to put any water in it. So that's why they've been dying off. But I thought these little alströmerias deserve, a bit more life. So I've got a few bits of alströmeria. Or perhaps I've got one bit of alströmeria. Yes, they've all fallen apart. But I might see if I can use that little bit. And it's sort of got this pinky theme coming on. So keeping my wire still attached, I'm going to put my materials on. So I have chosen, just for demonstration purposes, a little bit of the sedum. And our sedum is quite open, quite branched. So I reckon I can cut this and get myself 4 little stems. If I just go like that, it gives me 4 pieces or even more. It just breaks it down a little bit so it's not so bulky. In fact, I might even go like that. So it's got me lots of little pieces there. So I will take this in my hand and going the same way around, I'm going to start off with my sedum in there. And then I have to pull quite tightly because I don't want the sedum to fall out. And then it's that combination of how tightly do you pull, because you don't want to break your flowers. So the sedum, although the heads are quite robust, and I know they will dry, they do dry a bit of a brown though, that the stems are quite juicy. And if you pull too tightly, you run the risk that you're going to dig into the stem and then your flower head's going to fall off. So it's a combination of just getting it right between holding it on firmly but not so tightly that you've taken the heads off. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. But what I have got in that dried up arrangement, I have got some eucalyptus stems, so I could add a few of those in. A little bit there. Perhaps they start to go in with my sedum. What's the name of this flower? It's a zinnia. So I'm going to cut off the stem, take off the little leaves. Now this is going to be quite tricky to put in because the stems are actually hollow. I'm not sure if you can see that. And I can feel when I hold it that there's no substance. So again, I need to just be careful as I add that in. But these wreaths, when you're making them out of garden trimmings, are just such a good way of working out what it is that you can use and reuse. And as I say, it's the end of the season. I'm just, it's a bit like when you get to the end of the week and you haven't done your shop and you're trying to make a meal out of what you just happen to have left in the fridge. So I'm doing that the same way. So let's get my alstroemeria. Now, I don't obviously want to put dead flowers in my little door wreath, but the alstroemeria may or may not last. But what is showing the age of the alstroemeria is the leaves have gone yellow. So I'm going to snip off the leaves so I think that the alstroemeria is still alive. So a little bit there. Will that hold on? I don't think so. The petals are shattering off, so I have to make sure I don't hold it too clumsily with my hand. We'll have to wait and see whether that actually works. A little bit more sedum. Nice and firm. It does take an awful lot of binding, and that's why I normally keep the my bind wire on the reel, so you can just keep going and going, and then you'd be slopping it under the table in front of you. Let's do that. So I'm happy to twist, which makes it slightly more cumbersome to do. Now, how about my hydrangea? So this is what my hydrangea looks like. It's just starting to die off in the middle, so I'm going to take the leaves off. And then, do I want it big and puffy? Sometimes hydrangea can look a little bit too big in relation to everything else. So I'm going to just pinch off one of the florets so that when I put the flower head in, I kind of want my flower heads to have an equal volume, so it doesn't suddenly look really lopsided like that. And that stem's a bit long. I don't want it sticking out, so I can cut that off. Perhaps with a few more stems of my dried eucalyptus, which is very fashionable these days. Dried eucalyptus. I'm still not convinced by dried flowers because I can't get over the fact that they are actually looking rather dead. But you may well be a fan. So that goes in there. I'm trimming my stems off just to keep them short and out of the way. Perhaps a little bit more sedum on there. And then I'm going to have to add in more wire. Tie that together. Twist, twist, twist. And then some more of my lovely zinnias. So picking the leaves off, cutting the stems down to a manageable level. Coming around. The alstroemeria hasn't worked. As I'm working my door wreath, the alstroemeria is getting knocked and the petals are falling off. It's disappearing from view. And what else? And just merrily go round. And the beauty of a door wreath like this is that, go on my front door, and when it comes to die, I'll just put it in my compost bin. So the paper will rot down, but then I'll get left with the wire, so I can always get rid of the wire. But my compost goes to the council composting site, so it's compost at high heat. I don't know whether you're allowed to put metal in it. There's a whole different discussion. But basically I could just, chuck the whole thing on the compost heap, chuck it away kind of thing. Because there's no metal ring in there that I might want to save. So I tend to do that at Christmas. If I've made my door wreath on a metal ring, I tend to take them apart in order that I can use the ring for next year. So a little bit of my hydrangea in there. And what I was saying was, because it's a green base, if I can't go all the way around because I've run out of materials or run out of inclination, what I would do is hang the wreath so the flowers are at the bottom, so it kind of looks like a purposeful part completed wreath, which again is really fashionable at the moment. If you look on Pinterest, it's just an accent area. Door wreaths don't have to be round, totally, a rounded shape, but they don't have to have the plant material going all the way round. A couple more zinnias, and then I will have run out of the good stuff, and everything else I haven't used will be going to the compost heap. Around we go. A little bit more sedum. That. And zinnia. And I think I've got a tiny bit of hydrangea to finish. So a zinnia in there, and then as I'm wrapping the zinnia on, I'm just wrapping in some of those loose ends that were just that bit of the wreath where I could do with over wrapping. So that has worked out well. So that's why I don't over fuss if I've got any stems that are pinging out, because I know I'm going to go round. I normally make the circle, go around the circle again to strengthen it all up, and then of course when you're adding in your decorative materials you're going around again. Oh, thank you, Lisa. It does look pretty, doesn't it? And I quite like as well these autumn shades of pink. We think of autumn with the colour of the leaves, the yellow leaves, the orange leaves, and with the pumpkins and everything. Orange seems to take over, doesn't it? It can be quite glitzy, but I do quite like the pinks of the season. It just gives us a softer look, and especially if you're not embracing full-on Halloween, it's a nice way of having something to decorate your house without looking like that sort of more playful, childlike orange around everything. So I've just got a tiny bit of string. I've just got a little bit of the twigs sticking out, so I'm going to just take myself one more piece of wire just to bind in. As I get to the end of it, my binding looks a bit saggy, that bit I did right at the beginning. So I'm just going to take the opportunity of overwrapping just to bring that last bit firmly in. And then what you do with the bit that's at the end, what I normally do is turn it around. I don't know if you can see all my overbinding here, and I just stitch it round a little bit. So I've gone behind two of my bindings once, and then behind them again, and then that little cut end, I just bury it in, and then it's all ready to go on the hook on my front door. The strange little twiggy bit at the back there, trim that out. So you can definitely tell which is the front. And then around the back, everything is smooth and flat, so it's not going to knock against my door. And then again, looking at it, is it a perfect circle? Well, you don't really mind whether it is or not, but you can just sort of brace it and shape it a little bit. And there you have the finished door wreath with a little bit of autumn joy. And just don't fiddle with it too much, she says, as you're fiddling with it. It will all be perfectly fine. So I'm going to say goodbye now. It's been so nice spending a little bit of my morning with you. So if you're on half term, I hope you're having a great time, a relaxing time, and I will catch up with you later on in the week. So just a reminder, there's no Zoom flower class today. It's half term. If you're interested in a Zoom flower class, if you comment Zoom, I can message you contact you to get the details to you. In theory, you've missed the first 4 classes, but that doesn't matter, because once you've paid, I will send you out the videos for that, and then you've got the option of joining in live for the last 4 weeks, or again, you can watch them on catch-up afterwards. So I always record the lessons, and then you can watch them in your own time. Whether you've been to the class, I know sometimes the ladies do that they'll come to the class and then they rewatch the videos if there's something they can't quite remember how to do. So I shall say goodbye and catch up with you same time, same place next week. It does look rather nice, doesn't it? And colour coordinated. I'm sort of in pink and green. Obviously a pink and green kind of day. All right then, take my cup of saucer that has got leafage in it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.